There are promises a man must keep, even if it costs him everything. This is one of those stories. It happened in the winter of 1882 in a place called Copper Ridge, Wyoming, where the snow fell deep and the nights grew long, and a little girl with nowhere to go found a home she never expected. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me start where all good stories start, at the beginning, on a night when the temperature dropped below zero and the wind howled through the pines like something wild and hungry. The girl ran through the darkness. Her name was Annie Rose Morgan. She was 10 years old. Her dress was thin cotton, meant for parlor rooms and Sunday services, not for running through 3 feet of snow in the dead of winter. Her feet were wrapped in leather shoes that had belonged to her mother's shoes that were too big and filled with ice, and offered no protection against the cold that clawed at her skin like something alive. Behind her, voices called out. Men's voices. Angry voices. "Annie, you stop right now, girl." That was her Uncle Victor Blackwood, the man who was supposed to protect her. The man who had been given guardianship of her when her parents died 2 months ago in a train accident outside Denver. The man who had smiled at her for exactly 2 weeks before showing his true nature. Annie did not stop. She could not stop. Because stopping meant going back. And going back meant signing papers she did not understand. Papers that would take away the ranch her father had left her. Papers that would give everything to Victor. And after that, Victor had made it very clear there would be no need for a troublesome little girl who asked too many questions. The forest closed around her. Pine trees thick as prison bars. Darkness so complete she could barely see her own hands in front of her face. She stumbled over a root, fell hard, tasted blood in her mouth, where she bit her tongue. Behind her, closer now, she heard the crunch of boots in snow. "When I find you, girl, you will wish you had listened." That was Silas Crow, Victor's hired man, the one with the cold eyes and the knife always at his belt. The one who had grabbed her arm that afternoon and twisted it behind her back until she cried out until Victor told him to stop, not because he cared, but because bruises in the wrong places might raise questions. Annie pushed herself up, kept running. Her breath came in ragged gasps that burned her lungs. Her legs felt like they belonged to someone else, heavy and clumsy and refusing to obey. She did not know where she was going. She only knew she had to get away. A branch caught her dress. She heard fabric tear. Kept going. Her mother's shoes slipped off, first the left, then the right. The snow bit into her bare feet like teeth. Still she ran. Then her foot found nothing but air. She fell, tumbled down a slope she had not seen in the darkness, hit rocks and roots and frozen earth. Came to rest at the bottom in a heap, the wind knocked out of her stars dancing in her vision, even though she could see nothing but black. Above her, distant now, the voices called. But they were moving away, wrong direction. They had not seen her fall. Annie tried to stand. Her ankles screamed in protest. She crawled instead, found the trunk of a massive pine tree, pulled herself into the hollow space between its roots. She made herself as small as possible. Wrapped her arms around her knees, started to shake, whether from cold or fear, or both, she could not tell. This is how I will die, she thought. Frozen in the woods, alone. Just like Mama and Papa died. Alone in the wreckage of that train. She closed her eyes, and the night swallowed her whole. Morning came slowly to Wyoming in December. The sun rose late and reluctant, casting long shadows across the snow-covered land. It touched the tops of the mountains first, then crept down into the valleys, and finally reached the forest where a little girl lay unconscious beneath a pine tree, her lips blue, her skin pale as marble. 2 miles away, Cole Brennan saddled his horse in the pre-dawn darkness. He was 36 years old, tall and lean from years of ranch work. His face was weathered lines carved deep around his eyes and mouth from squinting into too many harsh suns and bearing too much sorrow. His hands were scarred and calloused. His eyes were gray, the color of a winter sky, and they held a sadness that had lived there for 2 years, ever since the day his wife Emma died, giving birth to a daughter who lived only long enough to draw 3 breaths. Cole did not speak much anymore, did not smile, did not let himself feel much of anything except the dull ache of loss that had become as familiar as his own heartbeat. But he had a son, Ethan, 7 years old, and the boy needed to eat. So Cole hunted. "Papa, can I come?" Ethan stood in the barn doorway, wrapped in a coat too big for him, his breath making clouds in the cold air. His face was eager, hopeful. He looked so much like Emma, it sometimes hurt Cole to look at him. Same dark hair, same bright eyes that saw wonder in everything. "Too cold," Cole said. "I will be warm, I promise." Cole looked at his son, saw the loneliness there, hiding beneath the hope. The boy spent too much time alone, too much time with only a father who had forgotten how to talk, how to laugh, how to be anything other than a shell going through the motions of living. "Get your rifle," Cole said. The joy that lit Ethan's face was like sunrise. They rode out together as the first light touched the eastern horizon. Their horses' breath steamed in the frigid air. The world was silent except for the creak of leather and the soft crunch of hooves in snow. They followed a game trail into the forest, moving slow and quiet, watching for signs of turkey. It was Ethan who saw her first. "Papa." The word was barely a whisper, but something in it made Cole turn his head, made him follow the direction of his son's pointing finger, made his heart suddenly pound harder in his chest. There at the base of an old pine tree was a small figure, a child, curled into a ball, utterly still. Cole was off his horse before he knew he was moving. Ethan stayed back, holding the reins, his eyes wide. Cole knelt in the snow beside the girl, pressed 2 fingers to her throat, feeling for a pulse he was terrified he would not find. There, faint, slow, but there. "Thank God," he whispered. He looked at her properly then. 10 years old, maybe, blonde hair tangled and full of pine needles, face pale, lips blue, a thin cotton dress torn and dirty. No shoes, no coat, bruises on her arms, a cut above her left eye, dried blood crusted there. "What happened to you?" he thought. But there was no time for questions. He scooped her up. She weighed almost nothing. Her skin was ice cold. He held her against his chest, trying to share his warmth, and walked back to his horse. Ethan was staring, his face a mixture of confusion and something else, something Cole could not quite name. "Papa," Ethan said slowly. "Papa, she looks like Emma." Cole looked down at the unconscious child in his arms, and his breath caught. Because the boy was right, not identical, but the blonde hair, the delicate features, the shape of her face. It was close enough that for one impossible moment, Cole's heart lurched with a grief so sharp it felt like a knife between his ribs. "Mount up," he said, his voice rough. "We are going home, now." The ride back to the ranch was the longest 15 minutes of Cole's life. He held the girl in front of him, cradled against his chest, willing his body heat to reach her. She did not wake, did not stir. He could feel her heartbeat against his arm, weak and irregular. Every few seconds he checked to make sure she was still breathing. Ethan rode beside him, silent now, his face serious. The boy kept stealing glances at the girl. Cole knew what he was thinking, knew and dreaded it. Because Ethan had been only 5 when Emma died, only 5 when his baby sister died, and he had never fully understood that death was permanent, that people who left did not come back. They reached the ranch as the sun cleared the mountains. It was not much to look at. A 2-story house that needed painting, a barn with one wall that sagged, fences that wanted mending. 2 years of grief had taken their toll, not just on Cole, but on everything he owned. He knew it, knew he should care more, could not quite manage to. He carried the girl inside, laid her on the sofa near the fireplace, started building up the fire, feeding it logs, until flames leapt high and heat began to fill the room. He pulled off her wet dress, wrapped her in thick wool blankets, propped her feet up on cushions. "Ethan, get water boiling, and find the medical kit." The boy ran to obey. Cole knelt beside the girl, checking her over with careful hands. The bruises on her arms were fresh purple and yellow. Finger marks. Someone had grabbed her hard. The cut on her forehead was shallow, but needed cleaning. Her feet were torn and bloody from running barefoot through the forest. "Who did this to you?" he thought again. "And why were you alone in the woods in the middle of winter?" Her eyes fluttered open. For a moment she just stared at him, unfocused, confused. Then awareness came flooding back, and fear with it. She tried to sit up, tried to pull away, her breath coming fast, and panicked. "Easy," Cole said, keeping his voice low and calm, the way he would with a spooked horse. "You are safe. No one is going to hurt you." "Where am I?" Her voice was small, hoarse from cold and screaming. "My ranch. About 10 miles east of Copper Ridge. I found you in the forest. You were half frozen." She looked around wildly, saw Ethan standing in the doorway with a kettle in his hands, staring at her with wonder in his eyes, saw the warm fire, the thick blankets, the simple but clean room. Some of the panic faded from her face, replaced by exhaustion, so deep it seemed to pull her down into the sofa. "You are not going to send me back," she whispered. "Back where?" "To him. To my uncle." Cole felt something cold settle in his gut. "Who is your uncle?" "Victor Blackwood." The name meant nothing to Cole, but the fear in her voice when she said it meant everything. "I am not sending you anywhere," he said. "Not until I know what happened. Not until you are warm and fed and safe." Annie looked at him for a long moment, her breath coming fast. searching his face for lies, for hidden intentions, for any sign that he was like the men she had run from. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her, because she nodded once and let her eyes close again. Ethan came closer, still holding the kettle, still staring. "Papa," he said in that same wondering tone. "She really does look like Emma." The girl's eyes opened again at that. "Emma, my mama," Ethan said. "She died. When my sister was born, my sister died too. Her name was Emma also." Cole saw tears well up in the girl's eyes. "I am sorry," she said. "I lost my mama and papa too, 2 months ago, in a train accident." And just like that, something shifted in the room. Some invisible barrier came down. Ethan set the kettle aside and came to kneel next to the sofa. He reached out one small hand and touched hers where it lay on top of the blanket. "You are cold," he said. "I am warming up now. Are you hungry? Papa can make soup. He is not very good at it, but it is warm." Despite everything, a tiny smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "I like soup." Cole stood, went to the kitchen, started pulling out vegetables in a pot, his mind racing. A girl running through the woods in winter, bruises on her arms, terrified of her uncle, parents dead 2 months ago. This was not going to be simple. This was going to be trouble. But as he heard Ethan's voice from the other room chattering away to the girl about the ranch and the horses and the turkey they had been hunting, heard her soft responses and occasional laugh, he found he did not care. She needed help. He could give it. That was all that mattered. Cole was not in fact very good at making soup. He burned the first pot, put in too much salt on the second attempt. The third try was edible, barely a watery broth with chunks of potato and carrot floating in it like shipwreck survivors. He brought it to the girl. She was sitting up now, color returning to her cheeks, Ethan beside her, showing her his collection of carved wooden animals. She took the bowl with both hands, warming her fingers on the sides, and took a careful sip. Her face did something complicated, trying not to grimace, trying to be polite. "It is awful, is it not?" Cole said. "No, it is. It is terrible," Ethan supplied cheerfully. "Papa burns everything. Mama used to say he could burn water if he tried hard enough." And then the girl laughed. A real laugh, bright and clear and surprised, as if she had not expected to ever laugh again. Cole felt something warm uncurl in his chest, something he had not felt in 2 years, something that might have been happiness if he had remembered what happiness felt like. "I can fix it," the girl said. "If you have salt and pepper, and maybe some herbs. You can cook. Mama taught me. She said every woman should know how to feed herself and the people she loves." The people she loves? Cole felt that warmth again, stronger now. He brought her the spices, watched as she tasted the soup, added pinches of this and that, stirred it carefully, tasted again. Her movements were precise, confident. This was a child who had been taught well and remembered the lessons. When she handed the bowl back to him, he tried it, blinked in surprise. It was good, actually good. "How did you do that?" "The soup was not bad," she said. "It just needed balancing. Like Mama always said, cooking is about balance." Ethan tried it next. His eyes went wide. "This is better than anything Papa has made in forever." "What is your name?" Cole asked. "Annie Rose Morgan." "Annie, I am Cole Brennan. This is my son Ethan." "I know, he already introduced himself 3 times. But she was smiling when she said it. They ate soup together, sitting around the fireplace, and slowly, carefully, Cole drew her story out of her. Her parents had been traveling from their ranch in Montana to Denver for her father's business. The train derailed in a snowstorm outside the city. 30 people died, including her mother and father. Annie had been thrown clear, broken arm and cuts, but alive. After she healed, she was sent to live with her Uncle Victor in Copper Ridge, her only living relative. He was nice at first, Annie said, her voice getting quieter, for about 2 weeks. Then he started asking me to sign papers, said it was just normal guardian things, but I read them. Mama taught me to always read what I sign. She looked down at her hands. The papers would give him my ranch. Everything Mama and Papa left me. 300 acres and $8,000. When I said no, he got angry. Started hurting me. Said I was an ungrateful child. Said I owed him for taking me in. Cole felt fury rising in his chest, hot and sharp. But he kept his voice calm. "So you ran." "Last night. He said if I did not sign by morning, he would send me to a family in California who needed a servant. I knew what that meant. I knew I would never come back." Her hands were shaking now. "So I waited until he was drinking with his man Silas, and I climbed out my window, and I ran." Ethan reached over and took her hand. "You are safe now," he said with absolute certainty. "Papa will protect you. He is the strongest man in Wyoming." Annie looked at Cole. Her eyes were old for a 10-year-old child. Eyes that had seen too much loss, too much cruelty. Will you protect me? Cole thought about the easy answer, thought about how much trouble this would bring, thought about Victor Blackwood and legal guardianship and the law that would probably be on the uncle's side. Thought about all the sensible, practical reasons to take this girl into town, hand her over to the marshal, let someone else deal with it. Then he looked at his son, at the hope shining in Ethan's face, looked at Annie, at the courage it must have taken to run into the winter night with nothing but desperation driving her, looked at his own hands, scarred and calloused from years of work, and remembered Emma's voice saying, "These are good hands, Cole, hands that protect, hands that help." "Yes," he said, "you can stay here, and I will protect you. That is a promise." Annie's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "Thank you. Now you should rest. You have been through enough." But before she could respond, before any of them could move, there was the sound of horses outside, multiple horses, and then heavy boots on the porch, and then pounding on the door. A man's voice, loud and authoritative. "Marshal Wade Cooper, Copper Ridge. Open up, Brennan. I need to speak with you about a missing child." Cole's eyes met Annie's, saw the terror flood back into her face. "Please," she whispered, "please do not let him take me." Cole stood, put himself between Annie and the door. "Ethan, take Annie upstairs, now." "Papa, now." The boy obeyed. Cole heard their footsteps on the stairs, heard a door close. Only then did he cross to the front door and open it. Marshal Wade Cooper stood on his porch. 55 years old, gray-haired, with the weather-beaten face of a man who had spent his life enforcing law in hard country. He was not alone. Behind him stood another man, younger, maybe 45, well-dressed in city clothes that looked out of place in ranch country. His face was handsome in a practiced way. His smile was warm and concerned, but his eyes were cold. "Mr. Brennan," the marshal said, "this is Victor Blackwood. He is looking for his niece, Annie Rose Morgan. 10 years old, blonde hair, last seen running from her room last night. You have seen anyone matching that description?" Cole looked at Victor Blackwood, saw the false concern on his face, saw the calculation behind it, saw a man who was used to getting what he wanted and did not care who he hurt to get it. "Why was she running?" Cole asked. Victor's expression shifted to sorrow. "She has been troubled since her parents died. Nightmares. Fear. I have tried to help her, but she does not understand that I only want what is best for her." He shook his head sadly. "I am afraid she may have run off in one of her confused states. In this cold alone, she could die out there." It was a good performance. Cole might have believed it if he had not seen the bruises on Annie's arms, if he had not heard the truth in her voice. "I found her," Cole said. Relief flooded Victor's face, too much relief. The relief of a man who had thought he lost something valuable. "Thank God. Where is she? Is she harmed?" "She was half frozen when I found her. Been warming her up. She is upstairs resting. I will take her home immediately." "No." The word hung in the cold air between them. Victor's smile tightened. "I beg your pardon. She stays here until I am satisfied she is well enough to travel, and until I am satisfied about a few other things. Mr. Brennan," Marshal Cooper said, his voice carrying a warning. "Mr. Blackwood is the legal guardian. He has papers. I have seen them myself." "Papers can say a lot of things," Cole said. "Does not make them right." Victor's mask slipped just for a second. Cole saw anger flash in those cold eyes. Then the concerned uncle face was back. "Marshal, I do not want to cause trouble, but my niece needs proper care, medical attention. She has been traumatized. This man is a stranger to her." "She is not going anywhere," Cole said flatly. The marshal sighed, looked between the two men. "This is going to be a problem." "It does not have to be," Victor said smoothly. "The law is clear. I have guardianship. I have the right to take my niece home." "And I have the right to make sure a child is not being sent into danger," Cole said. "Danger, I am her uncle, with bruises shaped like fingers on her arms." Silence. Victor's face went very still. "I do not know what lies she has told you, but—" "I saw them myself," Cole interrupted. "Fresh bruises. Someone grabbed that child hard enough to hurt her. Someone scared her enough that she ran into a winter night with no shoes and no coat. That does not sound like a loving guardian to me." Marshal Cooper was looking at Victor now with new eyes. "Is this true?" "Of course not. She is a child. She bruises easily. She is clumsy. I have never—" Victor stopped, took a breath, composed himself. "Marshal, I am a businessman. I have reputation. I have standing in this community. This cowboy is making accusations to avoid returning what is legally mine." "She is not property," Cole said, his voice hard as iron. "She is my responsibility. Then why was she running from you?" "Mr. Brennan," the marshal said, "I understand your concerns. But the law is the law. Mr. Blackwood has legal guardianship awarded by the court in Denver. Unless there is proof of wrongdoing, I cannot just take his word away from him. Cole felt the situation slipping away from him, felt the injustice of it, the wrongness. A child terrified and hurt, and the law said, give her back to the man who hurt her. 2 weeks, he said. What? Give me 2 weeks. Judge Carter makes his circuit through here every month. He is due in 2 weeks. Let him decide. Let Annie tell her story to someone who can make a legal ruling. Victor's jaw clenched. Absolutely not. I want my niece now. But Marshal Cooper was nodding slowly. That is not unreasonable, Mr. Blackwood. Judge Carter will be here in 13 days. We can have a proper hearing. If you are telling the truth, you have nothing to fear. I should not have to defend myself against the lies of a confused child and a rancher who probably wants her inheritance for himself. The accusation hung in the air. Cole felt it like a slap, but he kept his voice level. I do not want her money. I want to make sure she is safe. That is all. Marshal Cooper looked between them again, made his decision. 2 weeks. Annie stays with Mr. Brennan under my supervision. I will check in every few days. When Judge Carter arrives, we will have a hearing and settle this properly. He turned to Cole. But you keep that girl safe, Brennan. And if she disappears, I am coming for you. She will be safe, Cole said. Victor's face was a mask of barely controlled rage. This is not over, Brennan. I will have lawyers. I will have the court. And I will have what is mine. She is not yours, Cole said quietly. She is a child who deserves better than you. Victor turned and stalked to his horse, mounted up, looked back one last time, and the look in his eyes was pure cold calculation. 2 weeks. Enjoy them. He rode away. The marshal lingered a moment longer. You know you just made an enemy, he said. I know. Blackwood has money, has connections. He could make your life difficult. Let him try. Marshal Cooper studied him for a long moment, then nodded something like respect in his eyes. I will be back in 3 days. Make sure the girl is still here. He left. Cole stood on his porch and watched until both riders disappeared over the ridge. Then he went inside, climbed the stairs, found Annie and Ethan in the spare bedroom, Annie sitting on the bed, Ethan beside her, holding her hand. Did they take me? Annie whispered. No, Cole said. You are staying here, 2 weeks until the judge comes. Then we will settle this properly. And then? Cole knelt down so he was eye level with her. And then we make sure you never have to go back to someone who hurts you. That is a promise. Annie threw her arms around his neck, held on tight. Cole felt her tears against his shoulder and heard her whispered, Thank you, thank you. Over her head he met Ethan's eyes, saw his son smiling, saw hope there bright and fierce. 2 weeks, Cole thought. 2 weeks to protect this child. 2 weeks to figure out how to keep a promise he had no legal right to make. 2 weeks to become a father to a little girl who was not his daughter, but who needed him anyway. Outside, the snow began to fall again, and somewhere in the distance, Victor Blackwood was already planning his next move. But in this moment, in this room, there was warmth. There was safety. There was something that felt almost like family. And for now, that was enough. The days that followed were strange and careful, like walking on ice that might break at any moment. Annie healed slowly. The cuts on her feet closed. The bruises on her arms faded from purple to yellow to green. She slept in the spare bedroom, the one that had been meant for the daughter who never lived, and every morning Cole found himself listening for her footsteps, holding his breath, until he heard them reassuring himself that she was still there. Ethan was transformed. The quiet, withdrawn boy who had barely spoken since his mother's death suddenly filled the house with noise and laughter. He followed Annie everywhere, chattering about the ranch and the horses, and showing her his treasures, smooth stones from the creek bird feathers, the wooden animals his father had carved during long winter nights when grief made sleep impossible. Cole watched them together and felt something shifting inside his chest, something that had been frozen beginning to thaw. On the third morning, Annie came downstairs to find Cole burning breakfast. Again. The kitchen was full of smoke. The bacon was black. The eggs were rubber. Cole stood over the stove with the defeated expression of a man who had lost yet another battle with food. You need help, Annie said from the doorway. Cole turned, saw her standing there in one of Emma's old dresses, altered to fit her smaller frame. Her hair was braided, her feet wrapped in thick socks. She looked healthy, alive, nothing like the half-frozen waif he had found in the forest. I am beyond help, he said. Nobody is beyond help. You just need someone to teach you. She walked to the stove, surveyed the damage, and shook her head. When was the last time you cooked something that did not turn black? 2 years ago, when Emma was alive. The name hung between them. Cole saw Annie's expression soften. Mama used to say that cooking is like love. You cannot force it. You have to pay attention. Be patient. Care about what you are making. She looked up at him. Will you let me teach you?" And so began the lessons. Annie was patient in a way that surprised him. She showed him how to tell when the pan was hot enough, how to know when to flip the eggs, how much salt was too much. Cole was a terrible student, clumsy and impatient, but she never got frustrated. Just kept showing him over and over until his hands learned what his mind could not quite grasp. Ethan sat at the table and watched them grinning. "Papa is learning," he announced. "Annie is teaching Papa to cook. Someone has to," Annie said. "Otherwise you two will starve before the judge arrives." And just like that, without anyone planning it, they had become a strange little family, not by blood, not by law, but by something else, by choice, by need, by the simple fact that they fit together in a way that made the house feel less empty. On Sunday, Cole made a decision. "We are going to church," he said. Annie looked up from the primer she was reading to Ethan. "Church? The whole town will be there. They need to see you. See that you are well. See that you want to be here." He did not say the rest. Did not say that Victor was already spreading rumors, already poisoning the well. Did not say that public opinion would matter when Judge Carter arrived. Did not want to frighten her with the weight of what was coming. But Annie was smart. She understood. "What if people do not believe me?" she asked quietly. "Then we will make them believe," Cole said. "But you have to be brave." "Can you do that?" Annie straightened her spine, lifted her chin. "Yes." They rode into Copper Ridge in the wagon, the three of them bundled against the December cold. The town was small, just a collection of buildings clustered along a single main street. The church stood at the far end, white-painted wood with a simple cross on top. Horses and wagons filled the yard. Voices and laughter drifted from inside. Cole had not been to church since Emma died, had not wanted to hear about God's plan or divine mercy or any of the things people said when they did not know what else to say. But today was not about him. Today was about Annie. They walked through the door together. The talking stopped. Every head turned. Cole felt the weight of dozens of eyes, measuring, judging, speculating. He kept his hand on Annie's shoulder, steady and reassuring. Ethan pressed close to her other side, loyal as a guard dog. They found seats near the back. Cole nodded to the people he knew. Old friends who had brought food after Emma died, neighbors who had helped with the harvest. A few nodded back. Most just stared. Then the crowd parted, and Victor Blackwood walked in. He was dressed like a gentleman, fine suit and polished boots. His face was arranged in an expression of wounded dignity. Behind him walked Silas Crow, rough and dangerous-looking, even in his Sunday clothes. Victor's eyes found Annie. He smiled warm and concerned, the kind smile of a loving uncle. "Annie, sweetheart, I am so glad to see you well." Annie shrank back against Cole. He felt her press closer. "Mr. Blackwood," Cole said, his voice flat. "Mr. Brennan, I trust you are taking good care of my niece. She is safe." "Safe." Victor's smile tightened. An interesting choice of words. Safe from what I wonder, from family, from love, from the people who actually have a legal right to care for her. People were listening now, leaning in. This was better than any sermon. Cole stood, stepped between Annie and Victor. Safe from anyone who would hurt her. "Hurt her? I would never." Victor's voice broke convincingly. He addressed the watching crowd. "My brother's child, the last piece of family I have left in this world, and this man makes accusations, keeps her from me, tells lies." "I have not lied about anything," Cole said quietly. "Then show them." Victor's voice rose, righteous and angry. "Show them the bruises you claim I gave her. Let the good people of Copper Ridge see this evidence." The challenge hung in the air. Cole felt the trap closing. If he backed down, he looked like a liar. If he pushed forward, he was forcing a child to display her injuries like evidence at a trial. Either way, Victor won. But before Cole could respond, Annie stood up. She was small, 10 years old and barely 4 feet tall. Her voice shook when she spoke, but she met Victor's eyes without flinching. "You want them to see," she said. "I will show them." And she rolled up the sleeves of her dress. The bruises were still visible, faded now but unmistakable. Finger marks. 4 on one arm, thumb on the other. The mark of someone grabbing hard enough to hurt. A woman in the front row gasped. Annie turned slowly, letting everyone see. "He gave me these when I would not sign the papers. The papers that would give him my ranch. My inheritance." Her voice grew stronger. "When I said no, he grabbed me, twisted my arm, told me I was ungrateful, told me I owed him." "That is a lie." Victor's mask was cracking now. "You fell. You were clumsy. I did not fall. You hurt me." Annie looked around at the watching faces. "And when I still said no, he told me he would send me away, sell me to a family in California. I heard him say it to Mr. Crow, so I ran." Victor lunged forward. Cole caught him, one hand on the man's chest, stopping him cold. "Do not," Cole said softly. "Do not even think about it." For a moment they stood there frozen. Then a voice cut through the tension. "That is enough." A woman stepped forward from the crowd. She was perhaps 50, with iron-gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that missed nothing. Maggie Sullivan, owner of the general store and unofficial leader of the town's women. When Maggie spoke, people listened. She walked to Annie, knelt down, looked at the bruises with a practiced eye. Then she looked up at Victor with an expression that could have frozen fire. "I have 6 children, Mr. Blackwood. I know the difference between a fall and a hand. These are finger marks." She stood. "And I know something else. I know a frightened child when I see one. That girl is terrified of you." "She is confused," Victor protested. "Grief does strange things." "Do not insult my intelligence." Maggie's voice was ice. "I was there when her parents' bodies were brought back from Denver. I was there when she arrived in town. I saw her with you those first 2 weeks, and I saw how she changed after. Children do not bruise themselves. They do not run into winter nights in their bare feet because they are confused." Another woman stood. This one was younger, maybe 45, wearing the practical clothes of someone used to hard work. Cole recognized her. Doc Sarah Mitchell, the only physician within 50 miles. "I would like to examine the child," Doc Mitchell said. "With her permission and Mr. Brennan's, a proper medical examination, for the court record." "That would be appreciated, Doctor," Cole said. Victor was sweating now despite the December cold. "This is absurd. You are all turning against me because of the lies of a child and the ambitions of a—" he pointed at Cole. "A nobody rancher who probably wants her money for himself. I do not want her money," Cole said, his voice carrying to every corner of the church. "I want her safe, that is all." "And we want the truth," Maggie added. She looked around at the gathered townspeople. "This town has a choice. We can stand by and let a child be hurt, or we can stand up and say enough. What will it be?" For a long moment no one moved. Then a man stood. Old Gus McAllister, rancher from the North Valley. "I was at the boarding house the night before Annie ran. I heard shouting, heard a child crying. When I asked Mrs. Henderson what the commotion was, she said it was none of my business, but she looked troubled." He looked at Victor. "I believe the girl." Another voice, then another. Not everyone, but enough. Enough to show Victor that he did not have the town in his pocket the way he thought he did. Victor's face went dark with rage. He looked at Annie with an expression that made her press closer to Cole. "You will regret this, girl. When the judge comes, when the law speaks, you will regret turning people against family." "You are not my family," Annie said, her voice small but clear. "My family is dead. These people," she gestured to Cole and Ethan, "they are kinder to me than you ever were." Victor turned and stalked out of the church. Silas followed. The door slammed behind them. No one spoke. Then the reverend, who had been standing at the pulpit watching the entire exchange, cleared his throat. "Well," he said, "I think perhaps we have witnessed enough testimony for one Sunday. Shall we proceed with the actual service?" Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. People settled back into their seats, but Cole felt the shift. He felt the way some eyes were warmer now when they looked at Annie, felt the way Maggie nodded to him, a gesture of respect and alliance. They had won this round. But the war was far from over. After church, Doc Mitchell took Annie aside. Cole waited outside the small examination room in the doctor's office, pacing like a caged animal. Ethan sat on a bench, swinging his legs, confident in a way only children could be. "Annie is brave," Ethan said. "Yes, she is. Braver than me." Cole sat down beside his son. "Different kind of brave. You have your own courage. Will the judge let her stay with us?" The question Cole had been dreading. The question he did not have an answer to. "I do not know," he admitted, "but we will fight for her. That I promise." The door opened. Doc Mitchell came out, Annie beside her. The doctor's face was grim. "I found evidence consistent with physical abuse," she said quietly. "Old bruises in various stages of healing. A poorly set fracture in her left wrist, maybe 3 weeks old. Signs of malnourishment." She handed Cole a sealed envelope. "My full report, for the judge." "Thank you," Cole said. Doc Mitchell put her hand on Annie's shoulder. "You are a strong girl, stronger than you know. Do not let anyone make you feel small." Annie nodded, eyes bright with unshed tears. They walked back to the wagon together. Cole lifted Annie up to the seat, then Ethan. As he climbed up himself, he saw a rider on the ridge above town, just sitting there, watching. Silas Crow. Cole met his eyes across the distance. Neither man moved. It was a message, a promise of things to come. Then Silas turned his horse and disappeared over the ridge. That night, after Ethan was asleep and Annie was settled in her room, Cole sat on the porch despite the cold, looking out at his land, his failing ranch, his broken fences and sagging barn. He heard the door open. Footsteps. Annie came out wrapped in a thick quilt and sat down beside him. "You should be sleeping," he said. "So should you." They sat in silence for a while. The stars were bright overhead, sharp as diamonds in the frozen air. "Mr. Cole?" Annie's voice was small. "Just Cole. No mister." "Cole," she tried it out. "Can I ask you something? Anything. Why are you doing this, helping me? You do not have to. You could have sent me back with Uncle Victor and nobody would have blamed you. It would have been easier." "So why?" Cole was quiet for a long time, thinking about Emma, about the daughter who never got to live, about all the promises he had made and broken, about the man he had been and the man he was trying to become. "Because it is the right thing to do," he said finally, "and because—" He stopped, started again. "My wife, Emma, she always said that we have two choices in life. We can look away when people need help, keep ourselves safe, or we can step forward, even when it is hard, even when it costs us." He looked at Annie. "She would have helped you, without question, without hesitation. And I failed her in a lot of ways, but I will not fail in this." Annie leaned against his shoulder. "She must have been a good person, the best person I ever knew. I think she would be proud of you." Cole felt his throat tighten. "I hope so." They sat there together, the cowboy and the orphan girl, watching the stars and waiting for whatever came next. In 2 weeks, Judge Carter would arrive. In 2 weeks, the law would decide Annie's fate. In 2 weeks, everything would change. But tonight, in this moment, they had something precious. They had each other. And somewhere in the darkness, Victor Blackwood was making his own plans. Plans that would test them all. Plans that would force Cole to become the protector he had promised to be. The snow began to fall again, soft and quiet, covering the world in white. And the Promise Keeper kept his vigil, watching over the child who had come to trust him, ready to face whatever tomorrow brought. Marshal Wade Cooper had been wearing a badge for 32 years. He had seen men at their worst and their best. He had learned to read the signs, the tells, the small details that separated truth from lies. And right now, sitting in his office going through old telegraph messages, he was reading the signs of a pattern. Victor Blackwood was not who he claimed to be. The first message came from a marshal in Colorado Springs. In response to Wade's inquiry, the man had written back promptly. "Blackwood left here 3 years ago under suspicious circumstances. Woman named Margaret Henley claimed he defrauded her of land inheritance after her husband died. No charges filed, but town encouraged him to leave." The second message was from Durango. "Victor Blackwood known here. Gambler. Heavy debts. Left owing money to multiple establishments. Considered untrustworthy." The third was from a banker in Denver. "Blackwood attempted to secure loan using property he did not own. When questioned, became aggressive. We declined his business." Wade sat back in his chair and rubbed his tired eyes. 3 towns, 3 incidents, always involving money. Always involving someone vulnerable. Always just shy of criminal, but close enough to smell wrong. He thought about the little girl he had seen at church, the fear in her eyes when she looked at her uncle, the way she had rolled up her sleeves without hesitation, showing her bruises to the whole town. That was not the action of a liar. That was the action of someone desperate to be believed. Wade had a daughter himself, grown now, married, living in Kansas. But he remembered her at 10 years old, remembered her trust, her innocence, her absolute faith that adults would protect her. The thought of someone betraying that trust made his blood run cold. He gathered the messages, sealed them in an envelope. These would go to Judge Carter when he arrived, along with Doc Mitchell's medical report, along with testimony from the townspeople who had witnessed Annie's condition. Victor Blackwood might have legal papers. But Wade was building a case that would show the man's character, and in frontier justice, character mattered. He stood, put on his coat. He had one more stop to make today. Red Hawk lived in a small cabin 5 miles north of town, on land that had once belonged to his people before the treaties and the broken promises. He was 62 years old, a member of the Lakota Nation, one of the last of the old ones who remembered the way things were before the white men came in their endless waves. Most people in Copper Ridge avoided him, some from prejudice, some from simple discomfort with someone so different from themselves. But Wade had known Red Hawk for 20 years, had smoked pipes with him, had learned that wisdom came in many forms and many languages. He found the old man outside his cabin working on a deer hide stretched over a frame. Red Hawk looked up as Wade approached on horseback, said nothing, just waited. Wade dismounted. "I need your counsel." Red Hawk nodded to a log bench near his fire. They sat. Wade told him about Annie, about Victor, about Cole Brennan's promise to protect a child who was not his own. When he finished, Red Hawk was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke. "I knew the woman, Emma, Brennan's wife." Wade blinked in surprise. "You did 7 winters ago. Bad storm. Snow so deep the deer could not move. My people were hungry. Starving." Red Hawk's weathered face was distant with memory. "I came to the town. Asked for help. Most doors closed. They saw only Indian, saw only stranger. But Emma Brennan opened her door." He paused, working his hands, as if still feeling the cold of that winter. "She gave us food, blankets. Did not ask for payment, did not ask for gratitude, just gave because people were hungry and she had food." Red Hawk looked at Wade. Her husband stood beside her, did not question, did not hesitate. They gave until they had little left for themselves. Wade felt something tighten in his chest. He had not known this story. No one had. "Emma told me something that day," Red Hawk continued. "She said, 'We are all responsible for each other. When I see suffering and turn away, I am less than I was. When I see suffering and help, I become more.' Those were her words." "She was a good woman," Wade said quietly. "The best kind of woman. The kind who sees all people as people." Red Hawk looked toward the south, toward where the Brennan ranch lay beyond the ridge. "Cole Brennan lost her, lost their child, became hollow, empty. I have seen him in town these past 2 years, walking like ghost. Not living, just existing. And now he has purpose again. The little girl with yellow hair has given him reason to wake up, reason to fight, reason to be the man Emma believed he was." Red Hawk met Wade's eyes. "You ask for counsel? Here is counsel. Protect them, both of them. The child needs father. The father needs child. Sometimes broken things fit together and make something whole." Wade nodded slowly. "The law may not see it that way. The law is made by men, and men are often fools." Red Hawk smiled, a rare expression that transformed his weathered face. "But you are not fool Wade Cooper. You know what is right. Question is whether you are brave enough to stand for it when others say no. I am trying to be. Trying is not doing. When judge comes, you will have to choose. Letter of law or spirit of law, which will you defend?" It was the question Wade had been asking himself, the question that kept him awake at night, the question that had no easy answer. He stood, extended his hand. Red Hawk took it, their grip firm and respectful. "I will stand for what is right," Wade said, "whatever the cost. Then you honor the memory of Emma Brennan, and you honor yourself." Red Hawk released his hand. "Tell Cole Brennan that I remember his kindness. Tell him Red Hawk says he walks good path. Tell him to be strong. Dark times are coming." Wade rode back to town with those words echoing in his mind. Dark times are coming. He believed it. At the Brennan ranch, Cole was teaching Annie to ride. Ethan sat on the fence, shouting encouragement and advice that was mostly useless, but entirely enthusiastic. Annie sat atop Cole's gentlest mare, a patient old girl named Daisy, who had carried Emma through her pregnancy and seemed to understand that this new rider needed kindness. "Heels down," Cole said. "Sit deep. Do not grip with your knees." Annie adjusted her position. She was nervous, but determined, her jaw set in that stubborn way that reminded Cole more and more of Emma. She clicked her tongue. Daisy moved forward at a walk. "I am doing it!" Annie's face lit up with joy. "You are doing it," Cole agreed. "Now try turning her. Gentle pressure on the rein, like you are asking, not telling." Annie followed his instruction. Daisy turned smoothly. They made a slow circuit of the corral horse and rider, finding their rhythm together. Ethan cheered like Annie had just won a race. "You are a cowgirl now, a real cowgirl." Annie laughed bright and clear, and Cole felt that warmth in his chest again, the warmth that meant healing, the warmth that meant hope. After the lesson, they walked back to the house together. Annie was tired but happy, her cheeks flushed from cold and exercise. She started chattering about Daisy, about how the mare's ears moved when she listened, about how you could feel her breathing between your legs, about wanting to try a trot next time. Cole listened and smiled, and felt almost normal, almost like a father teaching his daughter to ride, almost like a family. Then he saw the rider coming up the road. His hand moved automatically to the rifle leaning against the porch post. But as the figure got closer, he recognized the banker. Cornelius Webb, 50 years old, soft, from good living, wearing a suit that cost more than most ranchers made in a month. "Ethan, take Annie inside," Cole said quietly. "But Papa, inside, now." The children obeyed. Cole waited on the porch, rifle in hand, but not raised. making a point. This was his land, his home. Webb dismounted carefully, like a man unused to horses. He tied his mount to the rail and looked up at Cole with an expression that managed to be both apologetic and smug. "Mr. Brennan, might we talk?" "Depends on what you want to talk about. Your loan and your situation." Cole's jaw tightened. He had a loan with Webb's bank. Small by some standards, $1,500 borrowed 3 years ago to expand the herd. He had been making payments, barely scraping by month to month. But he had been making them. "I am current on my payments," Cole said. "Technically, yes, but barely. And given your recent activities, the bank is concerned about your judgment, your ability to manage finances responsibly." "My activities." Webb had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Taking in the Morgan child, a child with a substantial inheritance. Some might say you have a conflict of interest." "Some might say a lot of things. Does not make them true. Mr. Brennan, I am here as a friend." Webb's voice took on a counseling tone. "Victor Blackwood is a client of the bank, a good client. He has assured me that if the child is returned to his guardianship, he will ensure that certain arrangements are made. Favorable arrangements for people who cooperate." Cole stared at him. "You are asking me to sell a child for money. I am asking you to be realistic. You are a struggling rancher with debts and a failing operation. Blackwood is offering to pay off your loan in full if you simply step aside and let the legal guardian take custody of his niece. That is $1,500 erased. A fresh start." "No." "You have not even considered—" "No." Cole's voice was flat, final. "That child trusts me. I gave her my word I would protect her. I do not break my word for money." Webb's expression hardened. "Then perhaps you should know that the bank is calling in your loan. Full payment, 30 days. The words hit like a physical blow. Cole felt the world tilt. $1,500. He did not have it, could not get it, not in 30 days, not in 30 months. "You cannot do that. The terms include a clause allowing the bank to demand full payment if the borrower engages in activities deemed financially irresponsible. Taking in a child you cannot afford to feed, that qualifies." Webb's smile was cold. 30 days, Mr. Brennan. Pay in full or we foreclose. Your choice." He mounted his horse and rode away. Cole stood on the porch, rifle still in hand, and felt the trap closing around him. Victor was not just fighting for Annie in court. He was attacking from every angle, buying allies, destroying enemies, using the law and money and influence like weapons. The door opened behind him. Annie stepped out. She had been listening. "This is my fault," she said, her voice small and broken. "I am causing you trouble. I should just go with Uncle Victor. Then he will leave you alone." Cole turned, looked at this brave, wounded child who was ready to sacrifice herself to save him, and felt something crack open inside his chest. All the grief and rage and helplessness of the past 2 years came flooding out and transformed into something else, something harder, something that would not bend. He knelt down, put his hands on Annie's shoulders, looked her straight in the eyes. "Listen to me. You are not trouble. You are not a burden. You are a child who deserves to be safe and loved and protected." His voice was rough with emotion. "I do not care about the money. I do not care about the ranch. I care about you. Do you understand? You matter more than any of it. But if you lose your home, then we will find another home, together, you and me and Ethan, as a family." He pulled her into a hug, felt her small arms wrap around his neck, felt her tears against his shoulder. "I made you a promise, and I keep my promises, no matter what." Ethan appeared in the doorway, came out and wrapped his arms around both of them. The three of them stood there on the porch holding on to each other, and Cole made a silent vow. He would not let Victor win, would not let money and corruption and the cruel machinery of the law tear this makeshift family apart. He would fight with everything he had for as long as it took, because some things were worth fighting for. And this little girl, this brave soul, who had run through winter darkness and survived, who had trusted him when she had every reason not to trust anyone, who had brought light back into his broken life, was worth everything. That night, after the children were asleep, Cole sat at his kitchen table and did the math. He had $200 saved. He could sell his herd for maybe $800 more. His horses might bring $300. The ranch itself was worth something, but selling it would take time he did not have. No matter how he calculated it, he came up short, $400 short. An impossible gap. He put his head in his hands, felt the weight of it crushing down, felt like he was failing again, the way he had failed Emma, the way he had failed their daughter, the way he failed at everything that mattered. Then he heard hoofbeats, multiple horses, coming fast. Cole grabbed his rifle and went to the window. What he saw made his blood run cold. 6 riders, coming up the road in the darkness, and leading them even from a distance, Cole could make out the shape of Silas Crow. They were not here to talk. They were here to take Annie by force. Cole moved fast, ran upstairs, shook Annie awake. "Get dressed, quickly, no questions." Her eyes went wide with fear, but she obeyed. Cole went to Ethan's room. The boy was already awake, sitting up in bed. "Papa, get your boots on, we are leaving." "Now." "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safe." He did not have time to explain, did not have time to plan. He just knew that 6 armed men were coming, and he was one man with 2 children to protect, and staying here meant a fight he could not win. They went out the back. Cole lifted Annie onto Daisy, put Ethan behind her, handed the reins to his son. "Ride to town, to Marshal Cooper's office. Tell him what is happening. Go now, fast as you can." Asked. "What about you?" Annie asked, her voice shaking. Cole looked at her, this child who had come to mean everything. "I will be right behind you, I promise." It was a lie. They both knew it. But Ethan kicked Daisy into motion, and they disappeared into the darkness, and Cole turned back to face the men who were coming to destroy everything he had left to protect. He checked his rifle. 6 shots. 6 men. The odds were not good, but he had made a promise, and Cole Brennan kept his promises, even if it killed him. The 6 riders reined their horses to a stop in front of Cole's house. Silas Crow sat in the center, a rifle across his saddle. The others spread out flanking him, men Cole did not recognize, hard faces, the kind of men you hired when you wanted something done and did not care how it got done. Cole stepped onto the porch, rifle ready, but not aimed. Yet. "You are on private property," he said, his voice carrying across the cold night air. "Turn around and leave." Silas smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "We are here for the girl. Hand her over, and nobody gets hurt." "The girl is under the protection of the law. Marshal Cooper made that clear." "Marshal is not here. Just you and me and the truth." Silas shifted in his saddle. "Mr. Blackwood is tired of waiting, tired of you interfering in family business, so we are going to settle this tonight. You hand over Annie Morgan, or we come in and take her." Cole raised his rifle, aimed it at Silas's chest. "First man who tries will be the first man who dies. You got 6 shots, 6 men. Even if you are fast as they say, you will not get us all. Maybe not, but I will get you. That I promise." For a moment they faced each other across the frozen yard. The tension stretched tight as wire. Cole could feel his heart pounding, could taste copper in his mouth. 6 against 1. Terrible odds, but he had sent Annie away, bought her time. That was what mattered. If he died here, at least he died keeping his promise. Then a voice cut through the darkness. Strong, authoritative, familiar. "Everyone lower your weapons, now!" Marshal Wade Cooper rode into the yard from the north trail, his own rifle pointed at Silas. Behind him came 2 more riders, deputies from the next county over. Wade must have suspected trouble, must have been watching. "This is none of your concern, Marshal," Silas said, though his hand moved away from his rifle. "A group of armed men threatening a citizen on his own land. That is exactly my concern." Wade moved his horse closer. "Mr. Crow, you and your friends are going to turn around and ride back to town, right now. Mr. Blackwood has legal rights. Mr. Blackwood can exercise those rights in court when Judge Carter arrives, not through vigilante action in the middle of the night." Wade's voice went hard. "Move, before I arrest all of you for attempted assault." Silas stared at Wade, then at Cole. His face was a mask of cold fury, but he was not stupid enough to fight a U.S. Marshal and 2 deputies. Not tonight, anyway. "This is not over, Brennan," he said. "I know," Cole replied. The riders turned and disappeared into the darkness. Wade waited until they were gone, then dismounted, walked to the porch where Cole stood still holding his rifle, his breath coming hard as the adrenaline faded. "Where are the children?" Wade asked. "Safe. I sent them to town." "Smart." Wade looked at the house. "You cannot stay here, not alone, not with Blackwood this desperate. This is my home, and it will still be your home tomorrow. But tonight you come to town with me. We will collect Annie and Ethan. You will all stay where I can protect you until the judge arrives." Cole wanted to argue, wanted to defend his land the way his pride demanded, but pride did not keep children safe. "All right," he said. "Let me get some things." They rode to town through the pre-dawn darkness, found Annie and Ethan at the marshal's office wrapped in blankets drinking hot coffee that the marshal's wife had made. Annie threw herself at Cole the moment he walked in, holding him so tight he could barely breathe. "I thought they killed you," she sobbed. "I thought—" "I am here," Cole said softly. "I am fine. We are all fine." But he could feel her shaking, could feel how close they had come to disaster. And he knew that Victor Blackwood was done playing games. 200 miles away in Denver, Victor Blackwood sat across from the most expensive lawyer money could buy. Ambrose Finch was 60 years old, silver-haired, dressed in a suit that cost more than most men made in a year. He had a reputation for winning impossible cases, for finding loopholes in airtight laws, for making juries see things his way through sheer force of personality and legal brilliance. He was also very, very expensive. "Your case is weak," Finch said, reviewing the papers Victor had provided. "You have legal guardianship, yes, but you also have accusations of abuse, medical evidence of injuries, witness testimony about the child's fear of you, character references for Brennan. This Marshall Cooper seems to be building quite a file." "Can you win?" Victor asked. His hands were shaking. He needed a drink, but could not afford to show weakness in front of this man. "I can win anything. The question is, can you afford me—" Finch named a figure that made Victor's stomach drop. $5,000, half up front. Victor thought about his debts. $12,000 owed to men who would kill him if he did not pay. Thought about Annie's inheritance. $8,000 in cash plus land worth at least $10,000 more. $18,000 total. Minus Finch's fee, minus paying off the gambling debts, he would walk away with maybe $1,000. $1,000 and his life. That was the calculation. "I can pay," Victor said, "but I need guarantees. I need to know you can deliver." Finch leaned back in his chair, steepled his fingers. "I have reviewed the judge, Nathaniel Carter. Good man. Honest. Cannot be bribed." He saw Victor's expression and smiled coldly. "I already tried on your behalf. Subtle inquiry through intermediaries." He refused, rather indignantly, I might add. "Then how— but we do not need to bribe the judge. We need to destroy the opposition's credibility. Make Brennan look like a gold digger. Make the child look coached. Make the town's support seem like mob mentality rather than genuine concern." Finch tapped the papers. "I am very good at creating reasonable doubt, at making juries question their own certainty. This is not a jury trial." "No, but the same principles apply. Judge Carter may be honest, but he is also bound by law. And the law is clear. You have legal guardianship. Brennan does not. Unless we can prove you are unfit beyond any doubt, custody defaults to you." Victor felt hope stirring. "So we can win." "We can win, but we need insurance." Finch leaned forward. "If the trial goes badly, if the judge rules against you, what is your contingency plan?" Victor thought about Silas and his men, thought about the failed attempt to take Annie by force, thought about how much more desperate he was now than he had been a week ago. "I have people," Victor said slowly, "people who will do what needs to be done. Be specific. If I lose in court, we take the girl anyway, force her to sign the papers transferring her inheritance. Then she disappears. An accident. Children run away all the time, get lost in the wilderness. Tragic but not uncommon." Finch's expression did not change. He had heard worse plans, done worse things. "That is extremely risky. If you are caught—" "I will not be caught. Silas knows how to make things look natural." "Very well." Finch gathered the papers. "I will see you in Copper Ridge in 12 days. Have my retainer ready. Cash. And pray that the courtroom solution works, because your alternative plan is something I never heard and never advised." Victor left the office feeling sick, feeling trapped, but also feeling like he still had a chance. Finch was the best. If anyone could win this, he could. And if he could not, well, Victor was already damned. Might as well be damned and rich rather than damned and dead. Back in Copper Ridge, Cole sat in Marshal Wade's office and listened to the plan. "Judge Carter arrives in 11 days, Wade said. "We need to be ready. We need every piece of evidence, every witness, every fact organized and presented properly." Doc Mitchell was there, Maggie Sullivan, Gus McAllister. Old Red Hawk had even come to town, a rare occurrence. They sat around Wade's office like a war council, because that was what this was, a war for a child's future. "I have my medical report," Doc Mitchell said. "Evidence of abuse spanning weeks, possibly months, malnourishment, injuries consistent with physical violence." "I have testimony from 5 people who witnessed the child's condition when she first arrived in town," Maggie added, "and 10 more willing to speak to Brennan's character." Red Hawk spoke quietly. "I will tell story of Emma, of kindness, of man who keeps promises." Wade nodded. "Good, all good. But we need to be prepared for what Blackwood will bring. He has money, we'll have lawyers. We'll attack from every angle." "Let him," Cole said. "Truth is on our side." "Truth is not always enough," Wade said gently. "Not when the law is complicated and money buys skilled liars." As if summoning a demon by speaking its name, the office door opened. Deputy Miller walked in. Young, maybe 25. Had only been wearing a badge for 6 months. He looked nervous, guilty. "Marshal, can I speak with you private?" Wade's eyes narrowed. Anything you need to say can be said in front of these people. Miller shifted uncomfortably. It is about the Brennan situation. Go on. I have been asked to testify at the hearing for Mr. Blackwood. The room went silent. Testify about what? Wade asked, his voice dangerous. About a conversation I overheard between Mr. Brennan and Mrs. Brennan before she died, about the Morgan family, about their wealth. Miller would not meet anyone's eyes. About how if anything happened to them, their estate would be valuable. Cole stood up so fast his chair fell over. That is a lie. I heard what I heard, Miller said, but his voice wavered. You heard nothing, because I never had such a conversation. I did not even know the Morgan family existed until Annie showed up freezing to death in my forest. Wade stepped between them. Deputy Miller, look at me. He waited until the young man raised his eyes. Did you actually hear this conversation? Or did someone pay you to say you heard it? Miller's face went red. Marshal, I have debts. Gambling debts. Mr. Blackwood offered to pay them if I— Get out. Wade's voice was ice. Turn in your badge. You are done. But Marshal, now, before I arrest you for perjury and corruption— Miller fled, left his badge on the desk. The door slammed behind him. Wade picked up the badge, looked at it with disgust. Blackwood is buying witnesses. This is worse than I thought. Will it matter? Maggie asked. Everyone knows Miller is a fool and a gambler. It creates doubt. That is all a good lawyer needs. Doubt. Wade looked at Cole. I am sorry. This is going to be harder than we thought. Cole felt the trap tightening again, felt the weight of money and power and corruption pressing down, felt like he was trying to hold back the ocean with his bare hands. That night, back at the boarding house where Wade had secured rooms for them, Annie could not sleep. Cole found her sitting by the window staring out at the dark street. You should rest, he said gently. I heard what that deputy said, about you wanting my family's money. Her voice was small. People are going to believe him, are they not? Cole sat down beside her. Some might. Then I should just give up. Sign the papers. Give Uncle Victor what he wants. She turned to look at him, tears streaming down her face. I am causing you so much trouble. Your loan, the lies, everything. If I just went away. Annie. Cole took her hands in his. Listen to me very carefully. You are not causing trouble. Victor is causing trouble. Greedy evil men are causing trouble. You are just a child who needs protection, and I will protect you, no matter what anyone says, no matter what it costs. But what if the judge does not believe us? It was the question Cole had been asking himself, the question that kept him awake at night. He could lie, could tell her everything would be fine, but Annie deserved the truth. Then we will keep fighting, he said. We will appeal. We will find another way. We will never stop fighting for you, because you are part of this family now, mine and Ethan's, and families do not abandon each other. Annie threw her arms around his neck, sobbed into his shoulder. Cole held her and felt his own tears falling, felt the impossible weight of responsibility, felt the fear of failing another person he loved. But he also felt something else, something harder, something that would not bend. Determination. He had lost Emma, had lost his infant daughter, had spent 2 years as a ghost in his own life. But he would not lose Annie, would not let corruption and greed steal away this brave child who had trusted him. The judge would arrive in 11 days to prepare, to gather strength, to make sure that when the moment came when truth faced off against lies and money faced off against justice, they would be ready. From across the room, Ethan appeared in his nightshirt, climbed onto Cole's other side, put his small arms around both his father and his sister. We will win, Papa, the boy said with absolute faith, because we are telling the truth, and truth always wins. Cole wished he had his son's certainty, wished the world was as simple as a 7-year-old believed, but he smiled, kissed both children on their foreheads. You are right, truth will win. We just have to make sure everyone hears it. They sat together by the window, the makeshift family, while outside the town of Copper Ridge slept, and Victor Blackwood plotted, and the wheels of justice ground slowly forward toward a confrontation that would decide everything. 11 days. It would have to be enough. The days crawled by like wounded animals. Each one brought them closer to the hearing. Each one tightened the noose of anticipation around Cole's throat until he could barely breathe. But Marshal Wade was not idle. On the 8th day, Maggie arrived at the boarding house with troubling news. Her face was drawn worried in a way Cole had never seen before. I need to tell you something about Judge Carter, she said, closing the door behind her. I sent a telegram to an old friend in Denver, someone who knows the legal circles there. Cole felt his stomach tighten. What did you find? Carter and Ambrose Finch were classmates. Harvard Law class of 1850. They studied together for 3 years. Maggie sat down heavily. They are not friends exactly. In fact, my contact says they had a falling out over some case years ago, but they know each other. Very well. Can we request a different judge? Annie asked, her voice small. Not this close to the hearing, Wade said, appearing in the doorway. He had been listening. And if we object now, it makes us look like we fear a fair trial, like we know our case is weak. Cole ran his hand through his hair. So we just have to trust that Carter will be impartial. We have to trust that the evidence is strong enough that even an old acquaintance cannot ignore it, Wade said. We make our case ironclad. So strong that personal history becomes irrelevant. Maggie nodded. Which is why the 3 women are so important. Why every piece of documentation matters. Why Annie's testimony has to be unshakable. He sent telegrams, dozens of them, to every town where Victor Blackwood had lived, every place the man had done business, every corner of the territory where his shadow had fallen. And slowly, carefully, the responses came back, each one adding another piece to the puzzle, each one painting a picture of a man who made his living off the misfortunes of others. On the 7th day, 3 women arrived in Copper Ridge. They came by train from different directions, different towns, different lives. But they all had one thing in common. They had all trusted Victor Blackwood, and they had all paid the price. The first was Sarah Hendricks from Colorado Springs, 40 years old, a widow whose husband had died in a mining accident. Victor had presented himself as a business partner of her late husband, had convinced her to sign over a small gold claim. By the time she realized the papers gave him everything and her nothing, he was gone. The second was Elizabeth Reeves from Durango, 28, young and beautiful and grieving the death of her parents. Victor had courted her, promised marriage, convinced her to put her inheritance in his name for safekeeping, vanished 3 days after she signed the documents. The third was Margaret Dawson from Denver, 35, a schoolteacher whose brother had died, leaving her a small house and some savings. Victor had befriended her, helped her with legal matters, slowly drained her accounts through cleverly worded authorizations she barely understood. Marshal Wade gathered them in the town hall. Cole was there, Maggie Sullivan, Doc Mitchell, Red Hawk, and Annie, sitting quiet and pale listening to women tell stories that mirrored her own. He has a pattern, Wade said, gesturing to the 3 women. Finds vulnerable people, usually women, usually grieving, gains their trust, takes their assets, disappears before they realize what happened. Sometimes he uses charm, sometimes intimidation, but always the same goal, money. Sarah Hendricks spoke, her voice bitter with memory. He told me my husband would have wanted me to trust him, that I was too emotional to make good decisions, that he was helping me. She looked at Annie. I see that same fear in your eyes, child, the same doubt, wondering if maybe he is right and you are wrong. Annie nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. You are not wrong, Elizabeth said firmly. We were not wrong. We were preyed upon. There is a difference. She turned to Wade. I will testify, whatever it takes. That man should not be allowed to hurt anyone else. Margaret Dawson was quieter, older, more defeated. Will it matter? He has lawyers, money, connections. I tried to fight him in Denver. The court said I signed the papers willingly, said it was a civil matter, not criminal. They did nothing. Judge Carter is not like the judges in Denver, Wade said. He is frontier law, old school. He cares about right and wrong, not just what is technically legal. I hope you are right, Margaret said. I truly do. Because if you are not, that child is lost. That night, Maggie Sullivan called a town meeting. Cole did not want to go. Did not want to stand in front of the whole town and be judged. But Wade insisted. They need to see you, see Annie, see that this is real, that this matters. So they went. The hall was packed, every bench filled, people standing along the walls. The whole population of Copper Ridge seemed to be there, drawn by curiosity or concern, or just the desire to witness history being made. Maggie stood at the front, waited for the crowd to settle. When she spoke, her voice carried to every corner of the room. We are here tonight because in 3 days, Judge Carter will decide the fate of a child. Annie Rose Morgan, orphaned, alone, caught between a man who claims to be her guardian and a man who actually acts like one. She paused. I know there has been talk, rumors, questions about Cole Brennan's intentions, about whether he wants the girl's inheritance, about whether we should trust a stranger over family. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Cole felt them like physical blows. So let me make something clear, Maggie continued. I have known Cole Brennan for 8 years, known his wife Emma, knew them as good people, honest people, the kind who help neighbors without asking for payment, who give food to the hungry, who see suffering and cannot turn away. She gestured to Red Hawk, standing silent at the edge of the room. Red Hawk here will tell you about a winter 7 years ago when his people were starving and the Brennans gave them food even though they had little themselves. Gave it freely, asked for nothing in return. Red Hawk nodded once. His weathered face was solemn. Doc Mitchell will tell you about the medical evidence she found on Annie's body. Bruises, malnutrition, a broken wrist that was never properly set. The marks of abuse. Doc Mitchell stood, held up her sealed report. I have examined that child. What I found would make you weep. No loving guardian does such things. And these 3 women, Maggie pointed to Sarah Elizabeth and Margaret sitting together in the front row, will tell you about Victor Blackwood's character, about his pattern of deception, about the lives he has destroyed in pursuit of money. One by one the women stood, told their stories. The crowd listened in growing horror and anger. This was not abstract anymore. Not rumors or speculation. These were real women, real harm, real evil. When they finished, Maggie spoke again. In 3 days, Judge Carter will ask whether Annie should stay with her legal guardian or be placed with Cole Brennan. That is the legal question. But there is a moral question, too. What kind of town are we? Do we stand up for what is right, or do we hide behind legalities and let a child be hurt because it is easier than fighting? She looked around the room, met eyes, held gazes. I am standing for that child. I am testifying on her behalf and on Cole Brennan's behalf. Who stands with me? For a long moment, no one moved. Then old Gus McAllister stood. I stand with you. Mrs. Henderson, who ran the boarding house. I stand with you. The blacksmith, the shopkeeper, the rancher from the North Valley. One by one, people stood. Not everyone. Some remained seated, loyal to Victor or afraid of making enemies or simply uncertain, but enough stood. 20 people. Then 25, then 30. Maggie nodded satisfaction in her eyes. Then we have our witnesses. We have our testimony, we have our truth. She turned to Cole. Mr. Brennan, do you have anything to say? Cole had not planned to speak, did not trust his voice. But he stood anyway, looked at the people of Copper Ridge, his neighbors, his community. I did not ask for this, he said quietly. Did not want trouble or attention. I just wanted to help a child who needed help. That is all. He paused. Some of you think I want her money. I do not. I want her safe. I want her to grow up without fear. I want her to have the childhood she deserves. His voice roughened. My wife, Emma, used to say we are all responsible for each other, that we become better people when we help and lesser people when we turn away. I am trying to be the man she believed I was. That is all I can do. He sat down. The hall was silent. Then Red Hawk stood. The old Lakota walked to the front of the room. Stood beside Maggie. When he spoke, his voice was soft but carried weight like stone. Long time ago, white man's law said my people had no rights. Said we were less than human, said taking our land was legal. We knew this was wrong, but law said it was right. He looked at the crowd. Law is made by men, and men make mistakes. Sometimes law is just. Sometimes law is weapon used by powerful against weak. He turned to Annie. This child has no power, has no voice except ours. We are her law. We are her justice. Question is this: do we have courage to be just, or do we hide behind paper and let wrong triumph? The old man sat down. The room was utterly still. Judge or no judge, the town had made its decision. They would stand for Annie. They would fight for what was right even if the law said otherwise. The night before the trial, Cole could not sleep. He sat in the boarding house room he shared with Ethan, listening to his son's soft breathing, watching shadows move across the ceiling. Tomorrow, everything would be decided. Tomorrow, truth would face lies. Tomorrow, a judge would determine whether he kept his promise or broke it. A soft knock on the door. Cole opened it to find Annie standing there in her nightgown, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Her eyes were red from crying. I am scared, she whispered. I know. Me too. What if the judge does not believe us? Cole knelt down, took her small hands in his big scarred ones. Then we will appeal, fight in a higher court. I have some money saved. We will hire our own lawyer. We will keep fighting until we win. You would do that? Spend all your money on me? Annie, you are worth more than all the money in the world. You and Ethan. You are my family now. And I protect my family no matter what. She hugged him tight. I love you. I know I am not supposed to say that because you are not really my father, but I do. I love you like you are. Cole felt his throat close up, felt tears burning behind his eyes. I love you too, like you are really my daughter. Because you are. Maybe not by blood, but by choice. And that counts for something. They stood there in the hallway, holding each other, finding strength in the embrace. Then Annie pulled back, wiped her eyes, stood a little straighter. "Bitte. Tomorrow I will tell the truth," she said. "I will be brave, like Mama would want me to be." "You are already the bravest person I know." Annie smiled, a real smile. Then she went back to her room. Cole returned to his own bed but still could not sleep. His mind raced with worries, with all the things that could go wrong, with the knowledge that Victor had money and lawyers and bought witnesses, with the fear that being right might not be enough. Around midnight, Cole heard a sound that made his blood freeze, a child's scream, muffled, distant, but unmistakable. Ethan. Cole was out of bed and running before his mind fully processed what he heard. Down the hall to Ethan's room, door hanging open, window broken, glass on the floor, and the room empty. "No!" The word came out as a gasp. "No, no, no." Annie's room. He ran there next. Also empty. Also with broken window. Also with signs of struggle. They had both been taken. Cole stood in the hallway, panic rising in his chest like floodwater. Then he saw it. A note pinned to Annie's pillow. The handwriting was crude, but the message was clear. "Copper Canyon, the old mining shack. Come alone or they die. You have until dawn to bring the deed to your ranch. We trade your land for the children. Tell the marshal, and we kill them both. Silas Crow." Cole's hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the paper. They had taken both children. Were using them as leverage, not just for Annie anymore, for everything, to destroy him completely. He looked at the clock. 2 a.m, 4 hours until dawn. He should tell Wade, should get help, but the note said, "Come alone," said they would kill the children if he brought law. Cole made his decision in 3 seconds. He would go, alone, would trade anything, everything to get those children back alive. His ranch meant nothing compared to their lives. He dressed quickly, gathered what he needed, rifle, pistol, knife. Then he stopped at Wade's door, knocked quietly. The marshal answered, already reaching for his gun. "What happened?" "They took them, both of them. Silas has them at Copper Canyon. Wants me to come alone with my ranch deed." "How long ago?" "Maybe an hour. Note says if I bring law, they die." Wade was already pulling on his boots. "Then we make sure they do not see law coming. You ride in the front. I come from the back with 2 deputies. We surround them. Wait if they see you. They will not see me. I have been tracking criminals in these mountains for 30 years. I know how to move quiet." Wade gripped Cole's shoulder. "We get those children back. Both of them. I promise you that." The ride to Copper Canyon took 2 hours through darkness and treacherous mountain trails. Cole arrived just as the first gray light touched the eastern horizon. The mining shack sat in a small valley, smoke rising from its chimney. 3 horses tied outside. Cole dismounted 50 yards away, checked his rifle one more time, trusted that Wade was out there somewhere in the darkness, watching, waiting. He walked toward the shack. Each step felt like walking toward his own execution. The door opened before he reached it. Silas stood there, rifle pointed at Cole's chest. "You bring the deed?" "I brought it." "Where are the children?" "Inside. Safe. For now." Silas smiled coldly. "Come on in, Brennan. Let us conclude our business." Cole stepped inside. The shack was small, dirty. 2 other men stood guard, and there, tied to chairs in the corner, were Annie and Ethan. Both had gags in their mouths. Both had tear-stained faces. But both were alive. Relief flooded through Cole so powerfully he almost staggered. "Papa," Ethan tried to say through the gag. "I am here," Cole said. "I am here. Everything is going to be all right." Then Victor Blackwood stepped out from the back room. He looked terrible, unshaven, wild-eyed, desperate. He held papers in one hand and a pen in the other. "The deed," Victor demanded. "Give it to Silas. Then the girl signs these papers transferring her inheritance to me. Then you all can go." "That was not the deal," Cole said. "The deal was my deed for the children. The deal is whatever I say it is." Victor's voice cracked with hysteria. "I need that inheritance. I need it, or I am dead. So the girl signs. Now." He walked to Annie, untied one of her hands, shoved the papers at her. "Sign. Sign, or I tell Silas to hurt your precious Ethan. Sign, or I make you watch him suffer." Annie looked at Cole. Her eyes were huge with terror, but also with something else. Trust. She believed he would save her, believed he would make this right. She took the pen, her hand unsteady. "Annie, no," Cole said. "Do not sign anything." "She signs or the boy screams," Victor said flatly. "Your choice, Brennan." Annie looked at Ethan, at her little brother who had called her sister, who had given her a family, who had made her feel loved for the first time since her parents died. She put pen to paper. "I am sorry," she whispered. I am so sorry." And she signed her name. Annie Rose Morgan, right there at the bottom of the document. Victor snatched the papers away, laughed. A high, cracked sound of relief and triumph. Finally, I have it. The ranch is mine. The money is mine. Now let them go," Cole said. "Why would I do that?" Victor's smile was vicious. "You have all seen too much. Know too much. No, I think a terrible accident is about to happen. A tragic fire in an old mining shack. A cowboy and 2 children caught inside. Such a shame." Silas was already moving toward the fireplace, pulling out a burning log. That was when Marshal Wade Cooper kicked in the back door. "Drop your weapons, U.S. Marshal, hands where I can see them." Everything happened at once. Silas Spun tried to raise his rifle. Wade shot him in the shoulder. The man went down screaming. The other 2 guards reached for their guns. Deputies burst through the front door and windows. Gunfire, shouting, chaos. Cole threw himself over the children's chairs, shielding them with his body. Victor tried to run. Made it 3 steps before Wade tackled him. The papers flew from his hands, scattering across the dirt floor. In 30 seconds it was over. Silas and his men were disarmed and bleeding. Victor was in handcuffs, and Cole was cutting the ropes that bound Annie and Ethan, pulling the gags from their mouths. "Papa," Ethan threw himself at Cole. "Papa, I was so scared." I know, but you're safe now." Cole looked at Annie. "Are you all right? Did they hurt you?" "I signed the papers," Annie said, tears streaming down her face. "I gave him everything. I am so sorry. I tried to be brave, but he was going to hurt Ethan, and I could not let him hurt Ethan." Wade knelt beside her. "Annie, listen to me. Those papers mean nothing. You signed under duress, under threat of violence. No court in this territory will honor a contract signed with a gun to your head." He picked up the scattered documents. "This is just more evidence against Victor Blackwood. Proof of extortion, kidnapping, attempted murder." "But I signed—" "You did what you had to do to protect your brother," Wade said gently. "That is not a crime. That is love. And the law understands that." Victor was screaming from where he lay on the ground, Wade's knee in his back. "The contract is legal. She signed it willingly. It is mine. The money is mine." "Shut up, Blackwood," Wade said tiredly. "You just confessed to kidnapping and extortion in front of a U.S. Marshal and 4 witnesses. The only thing you are getting is a prison cell." He looked at Cole. "Get those children home. I will handle this trash." Cole gathered Annie and Ethan, walked them out of that terrible shack into the clean morning air. They stood there for a moment, the 3 of them holding each other and breathing and being alive. "It is over," Cole said. "It is finally over." In 2 days, Judge Carter would arrive. But now they had even more evidence. Kidnapping, extortion, attempted murder. Victor Blackwood had destroyed himself. And the Promise Keeper had kept his promise. Judge Nathaniel Carter arrived on the noon train. He was 60 years old, tall and lean, with a face carved from prairie hardship and frontier justice. His hair was white as winter snow. His eyes were the color of flint. He had been riding the circuit for 30 years, bringing law to places that had known only chaos, and he had a reputation for 2 things: absolute fairness and complete intolerance for lies. He set up court in the town hall, cleared the front tables, arranged chairs, hung the territorial flag and the American flag side by side. By 2 o'clock every seat was filled, and people lined the walls 3 deep. This was the biggest thing to happen in Copper Ridge in living memory. Victor Blackwood sat at the left table with his lawyer, Ambrose Finch. Victor wore an expensive suit. His face was arranged in an expression of patient suffering. Finch beside him looked like a predator in gentleman's clothing, calm and confident, and ready to tear apart anyone who stood between his client and victory. Cole sat at the right table with Annie beside him. Marshal Wade sat behind them. Doc Mitchell, Maggie Sullivan, Red Hawk, the 3 women from Colorado and Denver. Ethan sat in the front row, his small face serious and determined. Judge Carter took his seat, banged his gavel once. The room fell silent. "This is a custody hearing regarding Annie Rose Morgan, age 10, orphaned child of Thomas and Catherine Morgan, deceased. Victor Blackwood claims guardianship by right of kinship and legal appointment. Cole Brennan contests this guardianship on grounds of abuse and unfitness." Carter's voice was gravelly, worn smooth by years of speaking over rowdy courtrooms. "This is not a criminal trial. This is an evaluation of what serves the best interest of the child. Mr. Finch, you may present your case." Ambrose Finch stood, smoothed his jacket, smiled at the judge with professional warmth. "Your Honor, this case is very simple. Victor Blackwood is the legal guardian of Annie Morgan, as appointed by proper court documents from Denver. He is her blood relative, her only living family. When her parents died tragically, he opened his home to her, provided for her, cared for her as best he could. Finch's voice was smooth as oil. Then she ran away in a moment of childish confusion and grief. Mr. Brennan found her, and rather than returning her to her rightful guardian, has kept her, has turned the town against her uncle, has made wild accusations of abuse without substantial proof. He walked toward the judge. The evidence will show that Mr. Brennan is a man in financial difficulty. His ranch is failing. His debts are mounting. Annie Morgan stands to inherit a considerable estate, $8,000 and 300 acres of prime land. Coincidence or calculated greed disguised as compassion? Finch turned to the crowd. I will show that the so-called evidence of abuse is nothing more than the normal injuries a clumsy child might sustain. That Mr. Brennan has coached the child to lie. That the town's support for him is based on sentiment rather than facts. And that the law, which must be our guide, clearly states that custody belongs to the legal guardian, which is Victor Blackwood. He sat down. The room buzzed with whispers. Judge Carter looked at Cole. Mr. Brennan, I understand you have no lawyer. Do you wish to represent yourself? Cole stood. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. Yes, Your Honor. I speak plain. I am not good with fancy words, but I know right from wrong. And what Victor Blackwood did to that child was wrong. I aim to prove it. Then proceed. Cole did not have a prepared speech, did not have legal training. He just had the truth. Annie came to me half frozen in the woods, barefoot, bruised, terrified. She told me her uncle hurt her. I saw the evidence with my own eyes. Finger marks on her arms, cuts on her feet from running, a broken wrist that had been set wrong. He looked at the judge. I am a rancher, not a doctor, but I know what fear looks like. And that child was more afraid of going back to Victor Blackwood than she was of dying in the snow. He gestured to Doc Mitchell. Doc Mitchell examined her, found evidence of ongoing abuse, malnourishment, multiple injuries. She will testify to that. Then to the three women. These women will tell you about Victor's pattern, how he preys on vulnerable people, takes their money, disappears. Annie is just his latest victim. Finally to the crowd. And these people will tell you about my character, about whether I am the kind of man who would use a child for money. They knew my wife Emma. They know me. They will speak the truth. He sat down. It was not eloquent, not polished, but it was honest. Judge Carter nodded. Call your first witness, Mr. Finch. Finch called Deputy Miller. The young man walked to the witness chair looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. Finch questioned him about the supposed conversation he had overheard between Cole and Emma about the Morgan family's wealth. And you are certain of what you heard? Finch asked. Yes, sir. Clear as day, mister. Brennan talking about how valuable their estate was. It was a good performance. Rehearsed. Almost believable. Then Cole stood for cross-examination. He was not trained in law, but he knew people, knew when they were lying. Deputy Miller, how much did Victor Blackwood pay you to say this? Miller's face went red. I was not paid nothing. Then how did you pay off your gambling debts? The ones everyone in town knows about. You were $300 in the hole last month. Now suddenly you are flush. Where did that money come from? I got lucky at cards. Who did you play with? I do not recall. You do not recall winning $300, but you recall a conversation from 2 years ago that you claim to have overheard. Cole's voice was hard. That is convenient, Finch objected. Judge Carter overruled. Answer the question, deputy. Miller squirmed. Maybe I was mistaken about the conversation. Maybe you were lying for money, Cole said flatly. The deputy was dismissed. His testimony was shredded. Worthless. Finch tried again. Called a businessman from Denver who testified that Victor was a respected member of the community. But under questioning from Cole, the man admitted he had only known Victor for 6 months and had never been to his home or met his family. Then it was Cole's turn. He called Doc Mitchell first. She presented her medical report, detailed every injury, every sign of abuse, every indication that Annie had been systematically hurt over weeks or months. Finch tried to discredit her. Could these injuries not be from normal childhood accidents? No, Doc Mitchell said firmly. The pattern is consistent with abuse. The finger bruises are too precise. The wrist fracture was not set, suggesting the child was denied medical care. The malnourishment indicates neglect. This is not clumsiness. This is cruelty. Next came the three women. Sarah, Elizabeth, and Margaret. Each told their story. Each described how Victor had gained their trust and taken their assets. Finch attacked them viciously, called them bitter, scorned, women whose own poor judgment led to their losses. But Judge Carter was listening, really listening. Cole could see it in the old man's face, the way his jaw tightened, the way his eyes hardened. Then came Red Hawk. The old Lakota walked to the front with dignity, refused to sit. stood like he was addressing a council of elders. "I speak of Emma Brennan," he said, "wife of Cole, mother of Ethan. 7 winters ago, she saved my people, gave food when we starved, asked nothing in return." He looked at Cole. "Her husband stood with her, gave when they had little, helped when no one else would." He turned to the judge. "Cole Brennan is keeper of promises, man of honor. His wife taught him to see all people as worth helping. He does not do this for money. He does this because it is right, because child needs protection, and he can give it." Red Hawk sat down. The room was silent. Finally, Cole called Annie to the stand. The little girl walked to the witness chair, each step an act of courage. She looked so small, so vulnerable. But when she sat down and looked at the judge, her eyes were clear. "Annie," Cole said gently, "tell the judge what happened. In your own words, tell him the truth." And she did. She told about her parents dying, about going to live with Uncle Victor, about the first 2 weeks when he was kind, then about the papers he wanted her to sign. "I read them." Annie said, her voice small but steady. "Mama taught me to always read before signing. The papers said Uncle Victor would get my ranch, my money, everything Mama and Papa left me. When I said no, he got angry." "What did he do when he got angry?" Cole asked. "He grabbed my arm, twisted it. It hurt so much I cried. He said I was ungrateful, that I owed him for taking me in." Annie's voice shook, but she kept going. "The next day he did it again when I still would not sign. He grabbed both arms, left bruises. Then he stopped feeding me as much. Said I did not deserve food if I would not cooperate." Tears were streaming down her face now, but she did not stop. "Then I heard him talking to Mr. Crow, heard him say he would send me to a family in California, that they would work me hard and I would never come back. That is when I knew I had to run. So I climbed out my window and ran into the woods. I thought I would die. But Mr. Cole found me, and he was kind, and he promised to protect me. And he has, even when it cost him, even when people lied about him. He kept his promise." She looked at Cole. "He is the best man I know, better than Uncle Victor ever was, and I want to stay with him. Please, I want to stay with my real family." There was not a dry eye in the courtroom. Even Judge Carter had to wipe his face. Finch stood for cross-examination. But what could he say? How could he attack a 10-year-old child telling the truth with tears streaming down her face? He tried anyway. "Annie, is it possible you misunderstood your uncle's intentions, that he was trying to help you manage your inheritance properly?" "No," Annie said. "He hurt me, on purpose. I did not misunderstand being grabbed hard enough to bruise. I did not misunderstand being starved." Finch had no response to that. Judge Carter looked at Victor. "Mr. Blackwood, do you wish to testify?" Victor stood, walked to the witness chair. Under oath, he denied everything, called Annie a confused child, called the women liars, called the whole town foolish for being swayed by emotion. Then Marshal Wade stood. "Your Honor, I have evidence. Telegraph messages from 3 different towns documenting Mr. Blackwood's pattern of fraud. Bank records showing his debts. Testimony from witnesses who saw him threaten the child." He presented it all, document by document, witness by witness, building a case that was unshakable. Victor's facade cracked. He tried to maintain his innocence, but his voice rose, his face flushed. "That money is mine. Her father owed me. I raised him when our parents died. I deserve that inheritance." "The child's inheritance is not yours," Judge Carter said coldly. "It belongs to her. She does not need it. She is just a child. I have debts, I have obligations." And there it was, the confession, not to abuse, but to motive, to greed, to the truth beneath all the lies. Judge Carter banged his gavel. "I have heard enough. I will render my decision now." The room held its breath. "Victor Blackwood, you stand accused not just of unfitness as a guardian, but of systematic fraud, abuse, and conspiracy. You will be tried, and if convicted, you will serve 20 years hard labor in the territorial prison at Laramie." Victor lunged from his chair. "No, you cannot. I have rights. I have lawyers. You have the right to a fair trial, which you will receive. Bailiff, take him into custody." Marshal Wade and his deputies grabbed Victor. The man fought, screamed, cursed, called the judge corrupt, called Cole a thief, called Annie a liar. But they dragged him away. The courtroom erupted in cheers. Judge Carter banged his gavel for silence. Then he looked at Cole. "Mr. Brennan, you have shown remarkable character in this matter. You took in a child who needed help, risked your reputation and your livelihood to protect her. The court finds you to be a fit and proper guardian." He paused. "I hereby grant you full legal custody of Annie Rose Morgan, with all rights and responsibilities attendant thereto. She is your daughter now, in the eyes of the law, and I suspect in the eyes of God." Cole could not speak, could only nod. Annie flew from the witness stand into his arms. Ethan ran to join them. They held each other while the courtroom celebrated around them. It was over. They had won. Justice had been served. 6 months later, on a warm June morning in 1883, 3 figures rode across the Wyoming grassland toward a small fenced cemetery on a hill. Cole Brennan sat tall in the saddle, his face weathered but peaceful. Beside him rode Annie, now 11 years old, healthy and happy and confident in a way she had never been before. And behind them came Ethan, chattering about the foal that had been born last week and how he was going to train it himself. They dismounted at the cemetery gate, walked together to a simple white cross that marked Emma Brennan's grave, and beside it a smaller cross for the baby daughter who had lived only 3 days. Annie carried wildflowers she had picked that morning. She laid them gently on both graves. "Hello, Mama Emma," she said softly. "Hello, baby Emma. I wanted to thank you. Papa says you are the reason he found me, the reason he knew how to help, so thank you." Cole knelt beside the graves, touched the crosses with gentle hands. "I kept my promise, Em, the one I made to you, to keep being the man you believed I was, to help people who need it, to not let grief make me small." His voice caught. "This little girl needed a father, and I needed her. We needed each other. I think you knew that. Somehow. I think you sent her to me." Ethan sat cross-legged in the grass. "Mama, we are a family now, a real family. Annie is my sister, forever and always, just like baby Emma was my sister. I have 2 sisters now, one in heaven and one here. Is that okay?" The wind rustled through the grass, soft, gentle, like an answer. They sat there together for a long time. The father who had lost everything and found it again. The daughter who had been abandoned and then chosen. The son who had grieved and then learned to hope. Finally Cole stood, helped Annie up, took both children's hands in his. "Time to go home," he said. "What will we have for supper?" Ethan asked. "Annie is teaching me to make stew," Cole said. "Real stew that does not burn." Annie laughed. "You are getting better, Papa. Last time you only burned it a little bit." They walked back to their horses, mounted up, turned toward home. As they rode away, Annie looked back once at the graves, then forward to the ranch in the distance, the home that was hers now, the family that had chosen her. "Papa," she said. "Yes." "Will you tell me again about promises?" Cole smiled. "There are promises a man must keep even if it costs him everything. Promises to protect people who cannot protect themselves. Promises to stand up for what is right even when it is hard. Promises to see people not as they appear but as they truly are." He looked at his daughter. "I promised to keep you safe, to give you a home, to be the father you deserved, and I will keep that promise every day for the rest of my life." "I know," Annie said, "because you are the promise keeper." They rode home together through the golden afternoon light, the cowboy and his 2 children across land that had seen heartbreak and healing, through a world that could be cruel but also could be kind if people chose to make it so. Behind them on a hill overlooking the prairie, 2 white crosses stood guard over the graves of a woman and child who had taught a broken man how to love again, how to hope again, how to be again. And ahead of them lay years of life and laughter, of struggles and triumphs, of ordinary days made extraordinary by the simple fact of being together. The promise had been kept. The family had been saved. And in the vast Wyoming territory, in a small town called Copper Ridge, people would tell this story for generations. The story of the mail-order bride who never came, the orphan who found a father in a cowboy, and the promise keeper who learned that sometimes the greatest gift is not what you receive but what you give. The end.